Welcome to the annual third grade President's Night.
We are thrilled to present to you your child's hard work of writing, research writing, and delivering their speech.
None of this would have happened without your incredible support, and so we hope you enjoy and you might find your president.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. I believe that the harder the conflict, the greater the triumph. I'm George Washington, and I was the first President of the United States of America. I served from 1789 until 1797. I took the oath of office on April 30th, 1789. I would not be here today if it wasn't for the leadership I learned in the war. As a child, I grew up in Westmoreland County, Virginia. I was born on February 22nd, 1732. My father died when I was 11. I had to help my family a lot. I had to help provide more, and I did a lot of farm work. I'm married to Martha Washington, and I had no children of my own. I only had stepchildren. It was a bit hard growing up, but I still loved it. I never went to college or any formal education, but I studied at home. I went to war when I was a bit older. I studied geometry and trigonometry in preparation for my first career as a surveyor. When I was in war, 4 bullets hit my coat. Luckily, the bullets missed my body. I was a very successful leader in the Revolutionary War. I was the president to create the title Mr. President. I was elected President of the United States twice. When I took the oath of office, I only had 1 tooth. I lost all my teeth because I was cracking walnuts. I was so embarrassed about my teeth, I didn't want to smile much. That's why you don't see me smile on the dollar bill. I'm the only president who never lived in Washington, D.C. It was sometimes difficult to be the president. However, I wouldn't change it. I love serving my country. I learned a lot of leadership from the Revolutionary War that I was able to use when I was president. While I didn't have a formal education like some, I did learn valuable lessons that served me well. I still believe that the harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know I learned to read and write at home? My name is John Adams, the first Vice President of the United States under George Washington and second President of the United States of America. I was President from March 4th, 1797 to March 3rd, 1801. I want to tell you about my childhood, career at Harvard College, and life achievements. I was born on October 30th, 1735 in Braintree, Massachusetts. I grew up on a farm, and my parents were John Adams Sr. and Susanna Boyson Adams. Surprisingly, I learned to read and write at home, and I went to a local school here. Soon, I was prepared to go to college. In 1751, I left home to go to Harvard College. I finished school in 1755 and moved to Worcester, Massachusetts to teach. When I realized I didn't like teaching, I moved to Boston, Massachusetts to study law. When I was in Boston, I studied law under the guidance of a lawyer for 2 years. Then I moved back to Braintree, Massachusetts to be a lawyer. I was vice president under George Washington. Then I was elected to be president and took office on March 4th, 1797. When I was president from March 4th, 1797 to March 3rd, 1801. In 1798, the U.S. Marine Corps was established as a permanent service by Congress. Once I was president, I had 5 children, and one of my children, John Quincy Adams, became the 6th president of the United States. Even though I lived in a small cabin and my parents did not have a lot of education, I became the 2nd president of the United States of America. I hope people will remember that I was the first president to have a son that was a president as well. Remember that I believed in freedom was important, and I said our Constitution was made only for moral and religious people. Thank you for taking your time to listen to my speech.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. My name is Thomas Jefferson. You can visit my home, Monticello, in Charlottesville, Virginia. It took me 15 years to build it, with a round roof and grand columns. I was the 3rd president of the United States from 1801 to 1809, serving 2 terms. I'm a strong believer in liberty, and I even wrote a bill establishing religious freedom. I'm very tall, standing at 6'2". I'm also a good rider. I was very proud to serve my country as president during such an important time in our nation's history. I had a good childhood with a large family on a plantation. I was born on April 13, 1743 in Albemarle County, Virginia. Tutors taught me reading, writing, and math. My father taught me how to ride a horse, hunt, and fish. As a child, I loved reading books and learning. My father and mother were wealthy planters. I'm the 3rd child and had 6 sisters and 2 brothers. One passed away during my childhood. I think my childhood prepared me for all the hard work I did in my life. I received a college education and went to law school. During my time at the College of William and Mary, I learned how to be a good writer and play the violin for up to 3 hours every day. After graduating from college, I was a lawyer. Then I became the governor of Virginia. Before I became president, I was the 1st Secretary of State, and then was elected to be the 2nd Vice President. I believed in a national government that had limited powers over the states, so I tried to be that kind of governor and president. Before I became president, I wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, which might have been the most important thing I ever did. I helped write the Constitution and Bill of Rights. As president in 1801, I sent the Navy to stop the Barbary pirates in the Mediterranean. I made a deal called the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the United States. Soon afterwards, I hired Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore new territory and make a map of our country. My presidency was a busy one and helped lay the foundations of our country. I spent my life serving our country, and it has been very rewarding. Education was so important to me that I created a public university in Charlottesville, Virginia, called the University of Virginia, established in 1819. After my presidency, I sold 6,500 books to make the Library of Congress. I retired to my state, Monticello, and I have been resting from my adventurous life. I would like to close with one of my famous quotes. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. My name is James Madison. I was the 4th President of the United States of America. I am known as the father of the Constitution. I had a bit of a rough childhood. I will tell you about it. I was born March 16, 1751 in Port Conway, Virginia. I was one of 12 children, but only 7 of my siblings survived until adulthood. My parents kept everything in line. I lived on a 3,000-acre farm because my father was a tobacco farmer. I loved school when I was younger and throughout my life. My childhood helped me prepare for my presidency. Education was important to my family, and I started out at boarding school, but had to get a private tutor to finish. I went to the College of New Jersey, which is now Princeton University. I studied math, languages, and many other subjects. In 1776, I was a delegate to the Virginia Convention, where I met Thomas Jefferson. In 1787, I represented Virginia at the Constitutional Convention. I was also a U.S. representative and then joined Jefferson as Secretary of State. I was able to meet and work with many important people. The years before and during my presidency had many important historical events. I created the basic framework for the U.S. Constitution. I also helped write the Bill of Rights. During my presidency, I signed a declaration of war against Great Britain, which started the War of 1812. The final years of my presidency, after the War of 1812, are known as the era of good feelings because there was peace and prosperity. Our country accomplished great things during my 2 terms as president. I was a prominent statesman and founding father of the Constitution. My childhood helped me prepare to be the 4th President of the United States of America. My career allowed me to meet and work with many important people. America became successful and peaceful during my presidency. During my life, I helped America become an independent and successful nation.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know that I was the 5th President of the United States? I'm James Monroe. Many people call me the last cocked hat. I earned this nickname from being the last president to wear breeches, a wig, and a tricorn hat. Let me tell you about my career in Virginia and the big decisions I made while I was president. I was born on April 28, 1758. My mother homeschooled me until I was 11. I started attending school when I was 11. I started college at the age of 16. I lived on a farm in Virginia. My father died when I was 16. In 1775, when I was 16 years old, the Revolutionary War broke out. I got wounded in battle but recovered. In 1783, I was wanted to help the country. I served as a U.S. Senator. I also worked with George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. In 1786, I married Elizabeth Corrigan. In 1811, I served in another war fighting against Britain. We won again. I did many good things for my people. On December 4th, 1816, I was elected President of the United States. I respected other people's ideas and opinions. I helped to free slaves from slavery and give them freedom. I bought Louisiana and Mississippi, which became the 19th and 20th states. I did many great things while I was president, and I enjoyed it. I've worked hard over my years. I've made many good choices. I am grateful. I am grateful for my strong education. The Monroe Doctrine helped many people. I fought and stayed strong and brave in the wars I fought in. I recovered, persevered, and protected others before myself. The Louisiana Purchase doubled the U.S. in size. It was an honor serving as president. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. I was known for saying try and fail, but don't fail to try. I am John Quincy Adams, and I am the 6th President of the United States. I am the first son of a president to become president. My parents were Abigail and John Adams. Not only was I president, I was also a diplomat and I worked in Congress. I want to tell you about my childhood and my career achievements. When I was a young boy, the Revolutionary War started and I saw the Battle of Bunker Hill. I had 4 siblings, but sadly one died as a baby. I grew up in Braintree, Massachusetts, which is now Quincy, on a large farm I had to help my mother with. My father was often away from home, first as a diplomat, then as president. My mother, Abigail, was the most accomplished American woman of her time. I saw history being made and the United States being shaped. My school and career were different than many. My learning began at the village school, and the rest of it provided by my parents because of the war. I traveled with my father, John, when he journeyed to France as a diplomat. There I learned to speak perfect French. I graduated from Harvard College and then studied law. I practiced law briefly, but then I was asked to be a diplomat for the United States. My whole education and career were focused on service to my country. During my presidency, I did not accomplish as much as I hoped to do. I really was a minority president, chosen by the House of Representatives. I was ahead of my time too, and people were not always ready for my ideas. I wished to use government money for science and the arts, but many people said no. One of my greatest achievements was that I negotiated the transcontinental treaty with Spain that gained the United States Florida. I also helped save a group of African slaves aboard the ship Amistad. I had many accomplishments, but not as many as I hoped for. I served my country all my life. I had an unusual childhood and an interesting education experience. I was proud to rescue African slaves, and now I am president. Remember, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. I am proud to work for the good of my country.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. It is true. During the War of 1812, my family had been captured along with other colonists by the British soldiers. I was 13 years old at this time. I learned to be brave and make my life a success. My name is Andrew Jackson. I was the 7th President of the United States. My job here was to keep America safe. I was born March 15, 1767, into the Waxhaw settlement of South Carolina. My father died early in my life. I was sad for the loss of him. I grew up poor, living in a log cabin with my mother and 2 brothers, Hugh and Robert Jackson. My mother was always by my side. She was great. My brothers and I didn't always get along, but our mother taught us to be kind to one another. When I turned 14 years old, my brothers and mother became ill and they all died. I was raised by my very own uncle and became an orphan. Even though I lost my family, I grew up feeling blessed to be still alive. I attended boarding school to start my education. Being in school taught me to make friends and speak up for myself. While attending school, I met my destiny and my love. I met my wife, Mrs. Jackson. After graduation, I became a very successful lawyer. Throughout my career, I was involved in many duels. I won 14 in a row. Crazy, right? Unfortunately, a bad person wanted to have a duel with me. He shot me in the right shoulder and the bullet remained there for the rest of my life. Many years later, I became the 7th President of the United States and founder of the Democratic Party. When I became president, one of my accomplishments were to be the only president to see the national debt paid off. I did not like paper money, so I got rid of the Bank of the United States for good. Many people did not like that I did this. By 1837, my presidency was over and I became ill and close to death. My mother told me to stand strong, and I did. I also became a success by being a president of the United States. My difficulties in life taught me to be strong and stand for what I believed. Even though I lost my mother and 2 brothers in life, I was still a success. I missed them greatly throughout my life. I finally died 1845 from the poison from the bullet that was lodged in my right shoulder. In my life, my mother told me to be brave and be a successful man, and I was.
Good evening, fellow Americans. The 2 happiest days of my life were those of my interest upon the office and my surrender of it.
I am Martin Van Buren, the 8th President of the United States of America. I took the oath of office on January 20th in 1837 to 1841. I was a vice president under Andrew Jackson before I became the actual president. From this, I learned how to be a leader for others. I was born in Kinderhook, New York on December 5th, 1782. I was the third out of 5 children in my family. As a child, I grew up on a farm and worked in a tavern. Education was very important to me. When I was young, people would tell me, "You are very intelligent." When I was 14, I attended law school. At 15, I started working in the court. In 1803, I passed the bar exam and became a lawyer. I was elected to the New York Senate in 1812 and served for 7 years. I was then elected governor of New York before I became the actual president. In 1837 to 1841, I was elected President of the United States of America. I ran for president 3 times, but only got elected once. I was a vice president under Andrew Jackson. When I was president, usually people would call me the little magician. I was the first president born a United States citizen, not a British subject. My life taught me how to be a leader for others. As a child, I worked in a tavern. I worked hard in school, and that's how I got into law school when I was just 14. I was the first president not to be a British subject. Sometimes it was a little easy to be president, and other times it was a little more challenging. It was an honor to serve my country, but like I said, the 2 happiest days of my life were those of my interest upon the office and my surrender of it.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know I was President of the United States for only 31 days? My name is William Henry Harrison, and I was the 9th President of the United States. Many people call me Tippecanoe because I fought in the Battle of Tippecanoe. I would like to inform you about my education, career, and presidency. On February 9, 1773, I was born at the Berkeley Plantation in Ohio. I am the 7th and youngest child in my family. My father is Benjamin Harrison V. My father signed the Declaration of Independence. Please stay tuned for my school and job experience. I was tutored until I was 14. Later, I was going to work as a doctor, but after my father died, I did not have the money to continue, so I had to drop out and join the Army. My battle for the presidency was difficult, but then I made a comeback. It took me 2 times to become president. I lost to Martin Van Buren, and then the next election, I won! I was elected on March 4th, 1841. I elected John Tyler for vice president. Before I was president, I was in the House of Representatives, and I was a United States Senator. After 1 month of presidency, I died. I became very sick with pneumonia and had to be cared for. On April 4th, 1841, I died. Interestingly enough, I am the first president to die in office. Before I died, I famously remarked to Tyler, "There is nothing more corrupting, nothing more destructive of the noblest and finest feelings of our nature than the exercises of unlimited power." Thank you, fellow Americans, for listening, and have a good evening.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We are all in enjoyment of blessings in civil and religious liberty. My name is John Tyler, and I'm the 10th President of the United States. I was called His Excellency because I was the first president to get the job without being elected to it. I will now tell you a little bit about myself. Let me tell you about my life as a child. I was born on March 29, 1790 in Charles City County, Virginia. I was 1 out of 8 children, and I was named after my dad. I relaxed from my studies by writing poetry and playing the violin. I studied hard and became interested in politics as a young boy, which influenced my adult life. My education and careers helped me to become president. I went to William and Mary College, and I studied Latin, Greek, and ancient history. Then I studied law with my father. First, I became a state legislator. Then I went to see the United States House of Representatives. I was also elected to the United States Senate before becoming vice president. My presidency was different than most. A president had never died in office before. President Harrison died after a month as president. I believed that it was my right to become president, and my cabinet agreed. When I was president, my first wife died. I remarried 2 years later. As president, I helped settle a land issue with Great Britain. Even though I was not elected, I accomplished a lot. I was involved with politics for most of my life. I learned from my father how to become a lawyer. After that, I had many political careers. I fought successfully to become president, and I set a standard for future vice presidents. My life story is spectacular. Thank you.
Good evening, fellow Americans. I'm the oldest UNC graduate you've ever met. I won the nickname Napoleon of the Stump. I'm James K. Polk, the 11th President of the United States. I served as president from 1845 to 1849. I'll be telling you about my childhood and my influence on the Mexican War as president. I was born on November 2nd, 1795, near Pineville, North Carolina. My parents were Samuel and Jane Knox Polk. I did most of the chores on our farm. I'm the oldest of 10 children. My family moved to Tennessee when I was 11. When I was a child, I worked diligently, but I learned how to work hard all the time. And in order to prepare to be a public servant, I went to UNC. I graduated from UNC in 1818. I gave a valedictorian speech in Latin. After graduation, I went back home to Tennessee and entered the law office of Felix Gundy. I was elected to the Tennessee House of Representatives in 1823. I won the election for governor of Tennessee. In 1835, I became Speaker of the House. When I was a lawyer and governor, I discovered that I enjoyed being a public servant. Amazingly, I won the presidential election by only 40,000 votes. I expanded the U.S. by 2/3. I sent troops to Texas, and Mexico attacked the U.S., starting the Mexican War. A few months after the Mexican War, I reaffirmed and extended the Monroe Doctrine in a special message to Congress. I renewed an offer to compromise on the 49th parallel. The UK rejected the offer, but later made the same proposal, which became the basis of the Oregon Treaty in 1846. I'm the first president not to seek re-election. During my presidency, I learned being the leader of a nation is hard. Throughout my childhood, career, and presidency, I learned hard work and perseverance can get you very far in your career. My childhood was very busy, and I learned many lessons about hard work. UNC helped me become a public servant. One of the most important things I did as president was expanding the U.S. by 2/3. I struggled throughout my life, but I persevered.
Greetings, my fellow Americans. I am Zachary Taylor. People call me Old Rough and Ready. I was elected the 12th President of the United States of America, serving from March 1849 until my death in 1850. My military career in the Army helped me get elected and guided my decisions during my presidency. I was born in 1784 in Lawrenceville, Virginia, but moved to a 400-acre farm in Jefferson County, Kentucky. I was raised by very wealthy people that owned 28 slaves. As I grew older, I followed in my father's footsteps and became a soldier. I served in the Army for some 4 decades. Like many United States presidents, I never attended formal school, but I was educated by tutors. During the Mexican War, I became a national hero. The Whig Party started to notice me as a possible presidential candidate. In 1848, I was chosen to run for the presidency, beating Lewis Cass and winning the Electoral College vote. I said at that time, I am not a party candidate, and if elected, cannot be president of parts, but the president of the whole people. I did not like to talk about my opinions on slavery. I did not want there to be slavery in the new states, even though I had slaves myself. On the 4th of July, 1850, I did not feel well. 5 days later, I died in the White House. One of the last things I said was, I have always done my duty. I am ready to die. My only regret is for the friends I leave behind me. Out of all my jobs, being the president was the hardest. But my military career helped me teach me toughness, and I needed this as a president. Even though I did not attend school, I worked hard and was able to be president. I am most proud of all the things that led to my presidency, including being a national hero in the Mexican War. Wow, I accomplished a lot, and you can do the same.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. This might be hard to believe, but I married my teacher, Abigail Powers. I'm the 13th President of the United States and was originally Vice President under Zachary Taylor. When President Taylor died, I became President of the United States from 1850 to 1853. I want to tell you how my life was as a child and being President of the United States and how it taught me to be stronger. I was born on January 7, 1800 in Cuyahoga County, New York. My family was poor and my dad was a farmer. I have 8 siblings, 5 sisters and 3 brothers. I was not treated well when I became an apprentice. It was hard being so rich and poor, but it taught me perseverance. Fortunately, I was able to go to school, and it actually was kind of bad at it, but I tried my best. I only attended school for 6 months and went to New Hope Academy. I met my future wife there, Abigail Powers. In 1819, I got a job as a clerk with the local judge. It was hard, but I was very grateful I had a job. I accomplished a couple of things while being President of the U.S. I signed the Great Compromise in 1850. I also became fourth in favor of the Compromise on Slavery. I once fought a fire at the Library of Congress. I'm glad I could do those things. Throughout my childhood and career, I learned to have strength and perseverance. My life was hard as a child, being so rich and poor. I was very glad and grateful I became a lawyer. I was extremely grateful when I became President of the United States. I will end with a wise quote. Let us remember that revolutions do not always establish freedom. Our own free institutions were not the offspring of a revolution. They existed before.
Good evening, fellow Americans. If your past is limited, your future is boundless. My name is Franklin Pierce. I was the 14th President of the United States of America. I took the oath of office on March 4th, 1853. I was known as Handsome Frank because I was well-dressed and had great hair. I was one of the youngest presidents, but I have to admit that I wasn't one of the most important presidents. As a child, I was born on November 23rd in 1804 in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. My parents were Benjamin and Anna Pierce, and I was one of 8 children. My family was well known and liked by the community. My father believed his children should be educated, so I attended many schools. Although I was silly and did not do well in school, I eventually completed my education. My father believed his son should be educated, and I did enjoy school. However, in the beginning, I had an experience that I consider a turning point in my life. At the age of 12, I attended Hillsborough Center and later Phillips Academy to prepare for college. I attended Bowdoin College in Maine. I became a lawyer and later was elected to the United States Representatives. I only practiced law for 2 years before I became a United States Senator for New Hampshire. While I was not very important, I did do good things. I was a moderate leader, and some people thought I was not qualified to be president. I helped pass the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which eventually led to the Civil War and the end of slavery. I became very unpopular and was not nominated to run for re-election. I was not one of the most important presidents, however, I did do many good things in my service to the people of the United States of America. I served in the House of Representatives. I helped repair the Transcontinental Railroad, which allowed for the people to settle in the Northwest. I am honored to have served as the 14th President of the United States of America. Thank you.
Good evening, fellow Americans.
Whatever the result may be, I shall carry to my grave in the consciousness I least meant well for my country. I am James Buchanan. I was the 15th President of the United States of America. I took the oath of office on March 4th, 1857. I tried to heal the differences between the North and South of the nation and Congress. But I failed. I was called to do nothing, please nobody. I was born on April 23rd, 1791. I was the second child of 11 children. I lived on a farm and my father owned a store. I learned arithmetic and bookkeeping while working at my father's store. My dad also taught me that I always need to look after my siblings and my mother, and when he died, I did that. One interesting fact about me is I am nearsighted in one eye and farsighted in the other. Education was important to me because I wanted to become president. I went to Dickinson College and I graduated in 1809 and became a lawyer. I began my political career by serving the Pennsylvania legislature from 1814 to 1816. In 1820, I was elected to the House of Representatives, where I remained for the next decade. I then served as minister in Great Britain and Russia and Great Britain and lived in many different countries. My early political career prepared me as my time as president. I served as president as part of the Democratic Party in critical years just before the Civil War. During my presidency, slavery was a major issue and I tried to maintain peace between people who believed in slavery and people that did not. During my presidency, I tried to stop the Civil War from happening in hopes of maintaining peace. I was happy to leave my presidency in hope the next president could restore the Union. My life was full of adventures, but I always stood up what I believed in. I grew up winning from an early age and always wanted to be president. Then all my careers led up to being president. Many people feel like I didn't accomplish anything during my presidency, but I stayed true to my independent beliefs. That made me a success. Good night and thank you.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know I only attended school for 1 year? I'm very famous for giving good speeches. Hopefully this will be one of my best. My name is Abraham Lincoln, and I was the 16th President of the United States. Many people call me Honest Abe because I'll never tell a lie. I'd like to tell you about my childhood, school, and presidency. I've got a fun fact for you. My birthday is February 12, 1809. I was born in a one-room cabin. I also have another fun fact for you. I have an older sister named Sarah, and I was the second child. I was born in Hodgenville, Kentucky. My mother died when I was 9 years old. My childhood was very difficult because my family moved a lot so that my dad could find work. My life was very harsh, and it helped me become a strong man. With only 1 year of school, I learned to read. I tried to read whatever I could get my hands on. Later, I worked on a riverboat, wanted to be a blacksmith, and even ran a store. I became a lawyer in Illinois and was elected to the Illinois legislature. With all my experience, I decided to run for president. I was president from 1861 to 1865. The Civil War started shortly after I became president. I had to make many big decisions as president. I signed the Emancipation Proclamation that helped to free slaves. I gave a speech called the Gettysburg Address, which is one of the most famous speeches in American history. While many people know the beginning of this speech 7 years ago, the purpose of my speech was to advocate for human equality. I was shot by John Wilkes Booth during a play at the Ford's Theater. I died 3 days later on April 15, 1865. I became president after overcoming many challenges. I am considered one of the greatest presidents of the United States of America. I would like to be remembered for my famous quotes. Leave nothing for tomorrow which can be done today. Thank you.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. My name is Andrew Johnson. Shockingly, I became president 6 weeks after Lincoln was elected. I was the 17th president of the United States. President Abraham Lincoln was president before me, while I was still vice president. Sadly, Lincoln was assassinated not long after he was elected, so I became president. Despite my 29 vetoes, Congress was still able to pass the Civil Rights Bill of 1866 and the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. I was born on December 29, 1808 in a log cabin in Raleigh, North Carolina. When I was 3 years old and my father died. As a child, I loved learning. However, my family could not afford to send me to school. I was born into poverty, so I never attended school. Instead, I was apprenticed as a tailor in Raleigh, North Carolina when I was 14. I had no education until I married Eliza McCardle. When I opened my own tailor shop in Greenville, Tennessee, my wife Eliza helped me learn basic writing and arithmetic. I started my education from then. Customers often gathered in my shop to discuss politics, which made me realize my enthusiasm in politics. I was elected to the Greenville Town Council and the Tennessee House of Representatives from 1835 to 1837 and from 1839 to 1841. When Tennessee seceded from the Union in 1861, I remained loyal to the U.S. and agreed to serve as the state's governor. In 1864, the American people voted for me to be Abraham Lincoln's vice president. With the Civil War recently ended, the country faced enormous problems. Much of the South lay in ruins and had to be rebuilt. African Americans were free but had no education. At the time that I became president of the United States after Lincoln's death, I thought it important to bring the Confederate States back to the Union. I decided to follow Lincoln's footsteps by giving the South an easy peace. When I became president after Lincoln was assassinated, I didn't really fight for the rights of Black Americans because I voted that states should have the right to allow slavery. Under my direction, the new legislators quickly passed back codes which kept African Americans from working on southern farms and denied them the right to vote. As a result, the freed African Americans were little better off than they were as slaves. Congress did not agree with my policies. The Republicans did not want to give the South an easy peace. When Congress passed the civil rights law that granted citizenship to former slaves, I vetoed it. One reason my presidency was challenging was because Congress did not agree with a lot of my policies. For example, as I said, the Republicans did not agree to give the South an easy peace. For example, the Senate voted on whether I should be removed from office. During my presidency, there was a whole mess of problems in my hands, like the South laying in ruins and slaves freed, but with no training or education. Many people would say I didn't accomplish anything, but I did try to help the United States recover after the Civil War. I would like to leave you with one of my famous quotes. The life of a republic lies certainly in the energy, virtue, and the intelligence of its citizens.
Hello, fellow Americans. I am Hiram S. Grant, but I go by the name mistakenly given to me at West Point, Ulysses S. Grant. I was president from 1869 to 1877. I grew up on a farm in Georgetown, Ohio. I was the eldest of 6 children, and my father owned a leather shop. As a child, I was known for being serious, stoic, and for my love of horses. I began attending school at age 5. I attended Presbyterian Academy and was accepted into the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. There, my skill with horses was recognized, and I won a spot in the Army's cavalry. After graduating, I tried to work in farming and real estate, but they just didn't fit me. I worked in my father's leather shop before I realized I was meant to have a military career. I served as a brevet second lieutenant and was recognized for my bravery in the U.S.-Mexican War. In April of 1861, the American Civil War began, and I was put in command of the Union troops. We won the Battle of Shiloh in April 1862 and fought in Virginia in 1864. Despite many victories, I mourn my lost soldiers and the waste that war created. On April 9, 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to me and the American Civil War was over. I earned my nickname Unconditional Surrender Grant because I would accept nothing less from the Confederate Army. I ran for president in 1868 with the goal of restoring stability to our country. I worked on getting the 15th Amendment passed because I believe that African American men deserve the right to vote. Some Southerners did not feel the same way, so I signed 4 force acts to secure the voting rights for African Americans. I also made peace with Native Americans and ended greenback inflation in my 8 years in office. In 1884, I discovered I had throat cancer. We did not have much money, and I wanted my wife Julie and my 4 children to be taken care of when I was gone. I decided to write a book about my life in order to provide for them. Although I had to spend many years away from my family, I know I had a great life. I spent the last of my days with my loving family writing my memoirs. I am Ulysses S. Grant, and this is my life.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know I was the governor for 3 terms in the state of Ohio? My name is Rutherford B. Hayes. I'm the 19th President of the United States. I'm known to say every expert once was a beginner. I committed my life for my people. Despite many setbacks and obstacles, I earned my nickname Dark Horse President. When I was growing up, I was the youngest of my family. I was born October 4th, 1822 in Delaware, Ohio, to Rutherford and Sophia Burchard Hayes. My father died before I was born, so my uncle Sardis Burchard raised me instead. During my childhood, I learned to be calm, even if it may be hard around me. I'd like to tell you about my school and career. Even though I lived on the frontier of early Ohio, I had a lot of schooling and was an excellent student. I went to Kenyon College and Harvard Law School in Connecticut and graduated in 1842. In 1852, I was elected city solicitor back home in Cincinnati. I served as general in the Civil War, was wounded 5 times. While I was serving as general, I ran for a seat in Congress. I then went home to Ohio to serve 3 terms as governor. I worked hard in my school and career to protect the rights to vote of African Americans. My presidency is known for being one of the most closest elections in history, but I served my country as best as I could. As president, I helped protect the right for former slaves to vote and the rights of immigrants in California. I was known to be wise about our use of money, and I made sure it represented actual gold so it would be valuable. Though I would not see it, I planned a canal to allow boats to go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific more safely and quickly. I call it the Panama Canal. I am proud of my work as president and stepped down after 1 term just as I had promised I would. I want to tell a short summary of my life. Growing up in Ohio, I learned to be calm even if it may be hard around me. I worked hard in my school and career to protect the rights of African Americans. I had one of the most disputed elections in history, but I worked hard to serve my country as best as I could anyway. From the time I was a child until I was an old man, my most important goal was to do what was right for my country.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. There are men and women who make the world better just by being the kind of people they are. They have a gift for kindness, courage, loyalty, and integrity. It really matters very little whether they are behind a wheel of a truck, running a business, or bringing up a family. They teach the truth by living it. I am James A. Garfield. I am the 20th President of the United States of America. My experience as a soldier, general, and president taught me a lot about bravery. I had a difficult childhood because my father died when I was a baby. My mother's name was Eliza Garfield. She had a difficult time feeding not one, but 6 mouths, and she had to eat after all of us. We had to sell 50 acres of land just to survive. During those times, I learned hard work and toughness. As I got older, I was always interested in learning and deciding to apply to college. I was able to attend Western Eclectic Institute that became Hiram Eclectic College. I also went to Williams College. It was my dream to become president of Western Eclectic Institute. I was able to achieve this. In 1863, during the Civil War, I became the youngest general. During the war, I finally ran for Vice President of the United States. Unfortunately, I did not win, but that was only the beginning of my time in politics. My road to becoming president was unexpected. I was giving a speech for another candidate, but when I asked my party who they wanted for president, surprisingly they chose me. I felt that I should first finish my service in the Civil War. I ultimately decided to run for president, and I was able to succeed. After I was elected, I had a hard time because people did not like me and the Democrats were fierce. As president, I strengthened the Navy. I also pushed for rights for African Americans and supported the gold standard. Even though it was not easy, I did have some accomplishments in my presidency. A favorite phrase I used to say was, "Man cannot live with bread alone. He must have peanut butter." I had to overcome a lot from my childhood to get where I am today. By dreaming of being president of my college and succeeding, it showed me that I can do great things. I am most proud of having fought for equal rights. As I said in my 1881 inauguration speech, the elevation of the Negro raised from slavery to the full rights of citizenship is the most important political change we have known since the adoption of the Constitution in 1787. Until we are all equal, we will never be free. Thank you.
Hello, fellow Americans. As I once said, men may die, but the fabrics of our free institutions remain unshaken. I am Chester A. Arthur, the 21st President of the United States. I was president from 1881 to 1885 because of the assassination of James A. Garfield. Throughout my life and presidency, I learned strength. My childhood was challenging because I grew up in a poor family. So my parents sent me to work when I was 13 years old. I was born in North Fairfield, Vermont on October 8, 1830. I had 6 sisters and 1 brother. I played in a baseball league when I was young. From my experiences as a child, I learned a lot that helped me in the future. When I grew up, I had many careers. I went to Union College in Barville, Kentucky. I became a teacher at a school now called Chester A. Arthur School in Philadelphia. Later on, I attended law school and became a lawyer in New York. I held several jobs so I could work and support my family. I am known for a few things. One of them is that I had the very first White House yard sale. I was also known as Elegant Arthur because I loved fashion. When I ran for vice president, I ran as a Republican with James Garfield as president and won 214 electoral votes to 155. During my presidency, I did not have a vice president. I was also active in the American Civil War. As a kid and adult, I learned how being strong during tough times. From being a student, teacher, and lawyer, by the age of 24, I was aware of hardships. I advocated and enforced the Pendleton Service Reform Act. This helped make getting a government job fair. I died from kidney disease at the age of 57 on my home on November 18, 1886.
Good evening, fellow Americans. I am Grover Cleveland. I was the 22nd and the 24th President of the United States of America. I have the distinction to be the only man to win the presidency in 1884, then lose it again in 1888, only to win it again in 1892. I took the oath of office March 4th, 1885 and 1893. You may not know, but I am on the $1,000 bill, which is no longer used. I am also known as Grover the Good. The jobs I have held, such as mayor, governor, county sheriff, and assistant district attorney, led me to be the President of the United States. I was born March 18, 1837 in Cadwell, New Jersey, but I spent most of my childhood in New York. My father was a Presbyterian minister. As a child, I learned the values and faith of hard work. I had to abandon school when my father died to help support my family. The morals and values I learned during this time helped me later in life. Education was very important to me, and I knew it would help me go farther in life. I was not able to finish high school since we had very little money for college, so I had to teach myself. I valued learning, and I spent all of my free time studying to pass the bar exam. After working in law, I became interested in politics. All this hard work helped me become the President of the United States of America. My 2 terms in office were marked by my fight for small government and my integrity. I was an honest president who fought against corruption. I strengthened U.S. defenses like the Navy. My Navy Secretary and I ordered modern guns and new steamships. I also helped the railroad industry by not allowing them to be a monopoly. All these accomplishments helped the future of our country. I was not the most popular president when I left office. However, I did a pretty good job. I consider it an honor to have served my country. God bless the United States of America.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. My name is Benjamin Harrison, and I was the 23rd President of the United States. This might be hard to believe, but my grandfather signed the Declaration of Independence. Throughout my life, my most important accomplishment was signing the Sherman Antitrust Act into law. I was born on August 20th, 1833 on a farm in North Bend, Ohio. My parents' names were Elizabeth Ramsey and John Scott. I was the second of 10 children. I spent my childhood in Ohio, and I enjoyed hunting, fishing, and working on our farm. My childhood was very fun and enjoyable. In order to prepare for a career as a public servant, I worked very hard in school and finding the perfect career. I graduated from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Soon after graduating, I joined the Republican Party, which was just getting started. From 1881 to 1887, I served as an Indiana representative in the Senate. I was educated very well and had a good career, and I believe that helped me a lot through my presidency. Before I became President Abraham Lincoln promoted me to brevet brigadier. One of the most important aspects of my presidency was 6 new states joined the United States while I was in office, including Washington, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Idaho. Also, while president, I signed the Sherman Antitrust Act into law. I worked for civil services improvement and fought for rights for African Americans. I have a lot of accomplishments of presidency to be proud of. Some memories I loved in and out of office were hunting and fishing on our farm as a child. Before I became president, I was often called Little Ben because I was so short. During the Civil War, I served as a Union officer. When I became president, it was very hard at times, but I'm so glad that I served as President of the United States. I'm sad my presidency is over, but I'm very happy that the country is no longer relying on me. I would like to close with one of my famous quotes. I pity the man who wants the coat so cheap that the man or woman who produces the clothes starves in the process. Thank you and have a great evening.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. My name is William McKinley, and I was the 25th President of the United States. I was a popular and strong leader, and I fought to make the U.S. into a world power. I would like to tell you about my childhood and career. I was born on January 29, 1843, in Niles, Ohio. I also had lots of friends and liked to ride horses, swim, and fly kites. I worked hard in school and dreamed of becoming a teacher. When I was young, I often went swimming in ponds or lakes. I was a lawyer too. When I was 18, I joined the Union Army to fight in the Civil War. I risked my life to bring food to hungry soldiers. I survived one of the deadliest battles of the Civil War, where more than 20,000 soldiers died. Because of my bravery, I received a medal. Then I was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, where I introduced my idea of a tariff on products from other countries. As a result, the price of foreign goods rose, so people bought more American products. This helped the U.S. business grow. After that, I was governor of Ohio. There I made laws that gave railroad workers more rights. I made new rules to stop child labor too. In 1896, I was elected as the 25th U.S. President. In 1898, I led the Spanish-American War. We won and took control over Cuba and Puerto Rico. I also claimed the Hawaiian Islands. I made gold exchangeable for money in the U.S. instead of silver too. Sadly, I was shot and killed by an assassin in 1901 at the beginning of my second term. Theodore Roosevelt became president after I died. I was known for my famous quote, "That's all a man can hope for during his lifetime," to set an example. I hope you remember me and thank you for listening to my speech. Have a nice day.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know that I was the youngest person to become president and the first president to receive the award of the Nobel Peace Prize? My name is Theodore Roosevelt, or as some people call me, Teddy Roosevelt, and I was the 26th president of the United States of America. Being the explorer I was, I once went on a hunting trip with a few of my friends. When they told me to shoot a bear, I refused, and when they told me to shoot a deer and other animals, I did. Therefore, I got the nickname of Teddy. One of my most famous quotes was, "Nothing in this world is worth having or doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty. And without this, I would never have been as successful as I was." On October 27, 1858, in Manhattan, New York, another male human was added to this wonderful world of ours. His name was Theodore Roosevelt. That would be me. As a child, I was afflicted with asthma. To cure myself, I took up gymnastics and weightlifting. When I was young, I lived in Manhattan, New York with my mom, Martha Bulloch, my dad, Theodore Sr., my brother, Elliot, and my two sisters, Corinne and Bammy. As a child, I enjoyed visiting my third cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who later became the 32nd President of the United States of America. My family was always very wealthy, so I was able to get a good education by a tutor when I was 11. Without my loving family and the lessons I learned from them as a child, I would never have become president. I was always one of the best in my grade. I attended Harvard College in 1880 and studied biology, law, and politics. From 1882 to 1884, I attended Columbia Law School. From 1884 to 1886, I worked as the New York governor, where I met a pretty woman named Alice Lee and later married her. Unfortunately, a few years after we married, she died on Valentine's Day, just a few hours after my mother. After that, I married another woman named Alice Lee. Named Edith Kermit, and we had 6 children. 4 sons named Theodore Jr., Kermit, Quentin, and Archibald, and 2 daughters named Alice and Ethel. Little did I know that in a few years, the biggest event of my life would occur that would change my life forever. In 1901, President William McKinley offered the job of vice president to me, and I accepted. After 194 days, William unexpectedly died, and I took over. One of my most important aspects of presidency was building the Panama Canal from 1903 to 1914. While giving a speech to an audience, I got shot in the right side of my chest. Even though I was injured, I was determined to finish my speech. Therefore, I waited until I finished my speech to get help. I was later quoted on this, and I said, "I don't always get shot during the middle of a speech, but when I do, I finish the speech." I was famous for creating national parks because of my love for nature. Because I was only 42 years of age when I accepted the job of president, I remained to be the youngest person to become president. Even though I enjoyed my 2 terms of presidency, I was glad to be home and resting. In my final years, I enjoyed visiting Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the rest of my family. I won the Nobel Peace Prize because of my efforts to stop the war between Russia and Japan. I created a group called the Rough Riders who fought for Cuba's independence from Spain. I would like to be remembered as a bully pulpit, a word that I created, which means a person who is in an important position that expresses their beliefs or important opinions. I died on January 6, 1919, at the age of 60. After I died, my face was carved onto Mount Rushmore. I would like to be remembered for one of my most famous quotes, "Nothing in this world is worth having or doing." If you don't believe you can, you can't. But if you believe you can, you're already halfway there. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful night.
Good evening, fellow Americans. Did you know that I am the only president in the history of the United States who is also the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? I am William Howard Taft, the 27th President of the U.S. I took the oath of office in 1909. As one of the largest presidents ever, my friends call me Big Love. I love playing sports like tennis, golf, and horseback riding. I am so huge that once I got stuck in my bathtub. My interest in law led me to work many jobs, such as professor, judge, governor, president, and chief justice, helping our nation become the greatest country in the world. I was born on September 15, 1857. As a child, I grew up in Mount Auburn, Cincinnati, Ohio. I had 5 siblings, and our mother stayed home to take care of us. My father was a minister, judge, and secretary of war. I grew up surrounded by law and politics, and that is how I became interested in government. I always say, don't write so that you can be understood, write so that you can't be misunderstood. I went to Yale University and I had a top quality education. Before I went to Yale, I attended Woodrow High School, a private school in Cincinnati. I served as a judge in Ohio Superior Court in the U.S. 6th Circuit Court of Appeals before accepting a post in 1900 as the first civilian governor of the Philippines, a nation of islands of the Pacific Ocean. I worked as a professor of law at Yale University until President Harding selected me Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. I worked very hard in school to achieve my dream of being a judge. While president, I made trust-busting efforts, set railroad rates in support of the constitutional amendments, mandating a federal income tax and the direct election of the senators by the people. I made the Children's Bureau that helped children have better lives and is still around today. I helped Alaska become a U.S. territory and Arizona and New Mexico become states. I helped the Philippines to create a government when I was Secretary of War. In 1901, I became the governor of the Philippine Islands. When I was governor, we were a strong example of one of the best colonial governments in the world. I established courts, land records, roads, and harbors. Through my hard work and dedication, I was able to help many people, even help create a new country. I love being a judge. It was my dream job. I'm the only person in the history of our great country to be both the president and the chief justice. Presidents come and go. The Supreme Court goes on forever. From helping children to helping the entire people of the Philippines, my love of the U.S. government and law and lots of hard work helped me make the world a better place.
Good evening, fellow Mike.
Go ahead.
Good evening, fellow Americans. My name is Woodrow Wilson, and I was the 28th President of the United States of America. I was president during an important time in history, and I was an advocate for democracy and peace. I was born on December 28, 1856 in Staunton, Virginia. And I was Scots-Irish and the third of 4 children. My father was a minister. We moved to Augusta, Georgia when I was very young. My name was actually Thomas Woodrow Wilson, but people called me Tommy. I later dropped my first name. As a child, I had weak eyesight. That meant it was harder for me to read and learn. I learned to work hard and overcome tough situations. Did you know that I was the first president with a PhD? I received good education growing up. I graduated from the College of New Jersey, which later became Princeton University. They also attended Davidson College in Charlotte, North Carolina. I earned my doctorate from Johns Hopkins University. I was interested in law, but better suited as a scholar and teacher. Though it was hard for me to learn early on, I found success and became governor of New Jersey in 1911, a few years before I became president. I was president from 1913 to 1921. I was able to lead America through World War I in 1914 through 1918. I was an advocate for the 19th Amendment, allowing the women the right to vote. I won Nobel Peace Prize in 1919 for founding the League of Nations. I also nominated the first Jewish person in the Supreme Court, and I established the Federal Reserve and the Federal Trade Commission. I was able to lead our country during a difficult time, and I did a lot of great things. Overcoming my disabilities made me a stronger person. I was able to lead I was very proud to be the first president with a PhD, and my education helped me lead our country successfully. I once said, if you lose your wealth, you have lost nothing. If you lose your health, you have lost something. But if you lose your character, you have lost everything. Thank you and good night.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know I started politics in 1896? I was the 6th vice president to take over office because the president died suddenly. America welcomed my dry wit, nicknaming me Silent Cal, and elected me in 1924 as the 30th president. My name is Calvin Coolidge. I was born in Plymouth, Vermont on July 4th, 1872. When I was 4, my dad bought a farm. I had a sister named Abigail. My time on the farm taught me nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. My school life was wild because when I was 5, I started school. I was the youngest in a class of 23 people. I went to Black River Academy. I had an ambition to go to law school. I didn't talk a lot, but I had a big brain. I did a lot in my presidency, some that not everyone agreed with. I enforced the Immigration Act to set limits for immigration into the USA. I sent troops to Central America when Civil War broke out. 7 months after my presidency, the Great Depression began. I was a politician for half of my life. I had quite a life. Did you know I owned 6 dogs, 1 bobcat, 1 goose, a donkey, an antelope, a wallaby, and 1 raccoon? I was the only president to be born the 4th of July. I married Grace Anna Goodyear and I had 2 children. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, fellow Americans. My name is Herbert Hoover. It's shocking, but I actually gave away my presidential salary. I was the 31st president. Many people called me Burr as a child. Sadly, my parents died when I was a young boy. I was one of the 2 presidents that were orphans. The other was Andrew Jackson. Throughout my childhood, I learned strength because I did not have parents to guide me. Even though during my presidency, many people didn't like me, I finally got credit after the Great Depression. I was born and raised in West Branch, Iowa, and my birthday is August 10th, 1874. My parents' names were Jesse and Huldah Hoover. They also believed in a simple lifestyle of helping and supporting others. As a child, it was hard, but I lived through and became President of the United States of America. In 1891, I started studying geology at Stanford University. After graduating from college, I took a job at a mine during the California Gold Rush. In 1897, I got a job with Buick Mooring and Company. They then sent me to Australia. I also found a mine and there was enough money for the company and me. It was 1921 when I became Secretary of Commerce under Warren G. Harding, the president at the time. During my life before being president, I taught Chinese immigrants about mining in America. Before my presidency, I formed an engineering company. I wanted America to share its wealth, so I made tax cuts for the poor. I also fought for the rights of Native Americans that are being treated unfairly. At the time I took office, the U.S. was finishing a period of economic success before the Great Depression, August 1929, March 1939. I also signed the Farm Relief Bill at the beginning of my presidentship. I love fishing so much that I even wrote a book called Fishing for Fun. I always thought that being an orphan would be hard. It was, but I was taken in by relatives. I then moved to California and was one of the first people at Stanford. I ran for president many times and finally won the 1928 election. I then took office from 1929 to 1933. Throughout my life, I learned being an orphan would pay off. Without being one, I would never have learned as much hard work and independence.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. I'm Franklin D. Roosevelt, sometimes called FDR for short. On a trip to Washington when I was 7, I met President Grover Cleveland. The tired and weary president remarked, "My little man, I am making a strange wish for you. It is that you may never become President of the United States." Ironically, I was the 32nd President of the United States. I will now inform you about my childhood, career, education, and presidency. Growing up in Hyde Park, New York, I spent most of my time with adults. I was born on January 30th, 1882, to James and Sarah Roosevelt. We lived on an estate, and I liked riding horses with my father and sailing. I had a private tutor until I was 14 because my family was wealthy. I became interested in politics because of my cousin Theodore Roosevelt, who was a politician. Even though I wasn't around other children, I had a happy childhood with loving parents. At the age of 14, I attended my first school. It was a boarding school called Groton. I I went with the sons from wealthy families for a good education and to learn to serve the public. Later, I attended Harvard University, where I was an average student. During my time at Harvard, I became interested in the Democratic Party. After college, I ran for Senate in New York. It was a tough race, but I won. Later, I became governor of New York. While on vacation, I contracted polio, a disease that paralyzes parts of your body. My legs became paralyzed, but I kept trying to walk. Even though I had struggles, I wanted to be a public servant. A few years later, in 1933, I was elected president. I served as president 4 terms, which is the most any U.S. president has ever served. I was the first president on TV. I made a law in the Great Depression called the New Deal, which I used to put people back to work and to build things like roads. Unfortunately, it was World War II, but I never gave up because the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I led the USA through one of the most difficult periods in history. I graduated from many prestigious educational institutions. I served 12 years as president during the Great Depression and World War II. I died in 1945 because of stroke. My Vice President Harry Truman dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan to end World War II. The United States was never the same after the events of my presidency. Thank you.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. I'm here to tell you that if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. My name is Harry S. Truman, the 33rd President of the United States from 1945 through 1953. Tonight I'm going to tell you about my childhood, my education, my career, and my presidency. I was born on May 8, 1884 in Lamar, Missouri. I was very close to my mother. I had a brother named John Vivian and a sister named Mary Jane. My childhood was busy for me because I owned a family farm and worked it with my father. In my free time, I played the piano. Unfortunately, my piano fell through the roof of my house one day. I also loved to read. I loved to read so much I read every book in Independence, Missouri library. My early years were challenging, but I got through them. In order to prepare for being president, I learned to work hard. I went to business school in Kansas City. After business school, I had lots of careers. One of my jobs was an owner of a clothing shop. After being an owner of a clothing shop, I was in the National Guard and served in the military. After the military, I was elected as a judge in Jackson County, Missouri. I loved being a judge, but one day President Roosevelt asked me to be vice president, and I said yes. I became president in April 1945 when President Roosevelt died. I was a member of the Democrat Party. When I was president, I learned to make hard decisions. I was the first president to do a speech on TV. I was also president during World War II. I ordered the atomic bomb to drop on Japan, and this ended World War II. This was the biggest decision I ever made. What I learned in my childhood helped me be one of the best presidents. For example, I read every book in the Independence Library and gained a lot of knowledge. I was elected to be a judge, and being a judge helped me be one of the best presidents because I learned about the law. I was in the National Guard, and being in the National Guard helped me because I learned about the military. I hope you enjoyed my speech. Thank you for listening about me. One final thing, get a dog. Good evening, fellow Americans. I am considered one of the bravest presidents. If you want to know why, I'll tell you. I'm Dwight David Eisenhower, the 34th president. I served as president from 1953 to 1961. Some people call me Ike. I am going to tell you about my childhood. I was born on October 14th, 1890. However, as a child, I wanted to work hard and never give up. My parents' names were David and Ida. My father fixed machines for a living. I worked a few jobs after graduating from West Point. Throughout my career, I learned you have to take risks. Later, I was in World War II. During World War II, I was selected to teach the European Theater of Operations. After the war, I became Chief of Staff, the Army's highest military office. My time in World War II led me to end the Korean War. Once I became the President of the United States, I sponsored and signed the Civil Rights Bill of 1957. This helped Black people to be treated fairly. I balanced the budget not just once, but 3 times. One of my goals was for equal rights for all Americans. By serving my country, by being president and a soldier, I learned I had to help the people of the earth. I served as a soldier in many wars. The most important accomplishment was signing the Civil Rights Bill. My wife and my parents believed in me, and I learned you have to work hard and never give up.
Good evening, fellow Americans. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I'm John F. Kennedy. I'm the 35th President of the United States of America. I took the oath of office on Friday, January 20th, 1961. People call me JFK for short. I served 2 years as president. During my time as a child, working hard in school, and my hard challenges as president, I learned hard life lessons. As a child, I grew up in a wealthy family in Brookline, Massachusetts. I was born on May 29, 1917, in a family of 9 children. I was the second oldest. My parents are Rose and Joseph Kennedy. We were very involved in politics. My parents instilled a competitive spirit and a sense of family loyalty in my siblings and me. My family is a Democrat. I got very sick as a child. I learned toughness and family loyalty as a child. Education was very important to me during my childhood and throughout my life. I attended elementary school in Brookline and Riverdale. When I was 13, I went to the Canterbury School and transferred to Choate Academy, where I graduated in 1935. My classmates voted me most likely to succeed. I graduated high school and I went to college. I attended Harvard University and majored in government and international business. I played football there. I competed on the swim team. I would play golf all the time at Harvard. I would work hard to show my father I can be president. In 1961, I acted on my anti-communism platform by leading American military assistance to the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba. Later in my administration, I tried to diminish anti-Americanism in the Western Hemisphere by developing projects under the Alliance of Progress and the Peace Corps. The most tense overseas confrontation of my years occurred with the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. I wish I could have finished my term as president and continued to serve my country that I love so much. My father believed that one of his 4 boys would be president, but he never believed it would be me. I worked hard to show him that one day I would fulfill his dream, become president. Throughout my service in the U.S. Navy, I learned leadership skills and won medals that made a path for me to become president. I was only president for 2 years, but those 2 years made my hopes and dreams come true. Thank you, and good night.
Good evening, fellow Americans. I'm Lyndon B. Johnson, the 36th President of the United States, and the only president sworn in on an airplane. I was born August 27, 1908 in Texas, Hill Country. I was the oldest out of 5 children. My family moved to a town named after my grandfather. Both of my parents were teachers. I knew the alphabet when I was 2 years old, and I could read when I was 4.
I went to Johnson City High School and soon after went to Southwest Texas State Teachers College. I worked my way through college as a janitor and office helper. After college, I was a teacher and taught many poor children. I got elected to the House of Representatives and served 24 years in Congress. I married Claudia Taylor, also known as Lady Bird Johnson. In 1960, I was elected vice president. On November 22, 1963, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. An hour and a half later, I was sworn in as president on an airplane. The next year, I helped create the Civil Rights Act. This gave equal rights to all Americans, no matter their color. This improved the lives of millions of Americans and helped our country grow stronger and more successful. During my time as president, I built the Great Society for All Americans. I created Medicare and Medicaid programs to provide for elderly and poor Americans. I was committed to improving education, preventing crime, and reducing pollution. During my time as president, the space program moved forward, and 3 astronauts successfully orbited the moon. The Vietnam War was happening at the time I took office. I increased the number of troops fighting in this war, and many Americans were not happy with me for this. This was an unpopular war, and it divided our nation. I withdrew my name for re-election as President of the United States in an effort to move our country towards peace. After leaving the White House, I returned to my ranch in South Texas. Thank you and good night.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. My name is Richard Nixon. I was the 37th President of the United States of America. Here is some advice. Never let your head hang down. Never give up and sit down and grieve. Find another way. And don't pray when it rains if you don't pray when the sun shines. That quote helped me through tough times. I became very famous because I was one of the 2 people to ever appear on the presidential ticket 5 times. My childhood was good, even though my mother was very strict. I grew up in a poor family. My father loved to talk to me about politics. As a child, I loved public speaking, music, and playing the violin. Throughout my childhood, I learned a lot about politics, and that helped me through my presidency. I was very smart as a child. My teacher said I was so smart that I could skip 2nd grade and go to 3rd. I went to Whittier College and living in a dorm with no heat or a bathroom. Later, I attended Duke Law School on a full scholarship. I graduated at the top of my class. Even though my family was poor, I persevered through my education. When I was 39 years old, I started my political career. I was vice president under Dwight David Eisenhower. I ran against my friend John F. Kennedy during the presidential race and won. I resigned from presidency because I was involved with the Watergate scandal. Nevertheless, I still helped in the Vietnam War and was president when Americans first landed on the moon. There were several great things that happened while I was president, but I will always be remembered for the Watergate scandal. I made some good decisions and some bad ones. I'm so glad my father told me about politics when I was young. The worst decision I made was being involved with the Watergate scandal. I'm very proud of the good things I have done for America because I followed my own advice. Never let your head hang down.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. My name is Gerald R. Ford. Did you know my given name was actually Leslie Lynch King Jr.? I was the 38th president. My stepdad named me Judy. My dream was to go to Yale. I had a cruel father, but my stepdad came along and we had a good life after that. I'm famous for being president without being elected. I fought for my country in World War II. I liked life because I had a very nice stepdad. I was named after him, Gerald R. Ford. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska on July 14, 1913. My mom and stepdad had 3 more sons. I had a great education. I went to the University of Michigan. After graduating, I hoped dearly to go to Yale, and I did. During World War II, I was in the Navy. I was elected to the House of Representatives as a congressman from Michigan in 1948. In fact, I learned my work so much I served as a congressman for 26 years. These are some of my achievements. I became vice president when the vice president resigned. Less than a year later, I became president after the president resigned. I signed the Helsinki Accords to make things more peaceful with the Soviet Union. I pardoned Richard Nixon. This is one of the things I'll be most remembered for. I did many amazing things and I survived 2 assassination attempts. I had an interesting life in presidency. I was vice president and president. I love my jobs that involve serving America. I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. A government big enough to give you everything you want is a government big enough to take everything you have. It was lovely serving for you.
My fellow Americans, my name is James L. Carlton. I was the 39th President of the United States, and I served 1 term from 1977 to 1981. I was born in Plains, Georgia on October 1st, 1924. I was the oldest of 3 children, and my family owned a peanut farm. Growing up, I had no running water or electricity. I attended college in Georgia, and then went to the U.S. Naval Academy, graduating from the academy in 1946. That same year, I married Eleanor Osborne Smith. We had 4 children. I was in the Navy for 7 years and was involved in the 4th Nuclear Submarine Division. My father died in 1956, and I returned to Plains, Georgia to take over the family farm. I started to get involved in my community, and in 1962, I ran and was elected as a state senator. After years of hard work, I eventually was elected as the 76th governor of Georgia in 1971. On October 12, 1974, I announced that I was running for the presidency of the United States and won the Democratic nomination. After a hard-fought election, I narrowly defeated Republican nominee and current President Gerald Ford. During my time as president, a lot of things happened that I was part of. On August 3, 1977, the first space shuttle, Enterprise, made its first test flight. In 1979, the United States had a major oil and energy crisis, with gas prices soaring up and long lines at gas stations. This is when I gave one of my most famous speeches called The Crisis of Confidence. Also in 1979, I oversaw an amazing event in Washington, D.C. Egypt's Anwar al-Sadat and Israel's Menachem began signing a peace treaty that brought peace to the 2 countries who had been at war since 1948. On May 18, 1980, during my presidency, I witnessed a devastating event when the volcano of Mount St. Helens erupted with the force of 500 atomic bombs. Once out of office, I became the 3rd president to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I won for my hard work on human rights. I also became very involved in Habitat for Humanity. And today I have the honor of being the oldest living president ever at the age of 96, and have been attended for 10 inaugurations over the past 4 years. Till this year, I couldn't attend President Biden's due to COVID. Thank you and good night.
Good evening, fellow Americans. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I am Ronald Reagan, and I was the 40th President of the United States of America. I took oath of office on January 20th, 1981. I served our country during an important time in history. I was born in Tampico, Illinois, February 11th, 1911. As a child, I attended Silas Willard Elementary School. My father was a shoe salesman. I lived in an apartment with no plumbing with my brother Neil and my parents. We eventually moved to a house. Education was very important to me and helped me in my presidency. I was able to attend high school when I was 9 years old.
I attended Aruka College and earned my degree in 1937. I decided to become a lifeguard because I wanted to save people. When I was a teenager, I saved 77 people from drowning. I chose to be a radio sports announcer and then went to Hollywood to be a movie star. I made 54 movies and retired in 1960. In 1966, I became governor of California. I became president during a great change in our world. I won against Jimmy Carter and took the oath of office on January 80 and took the oath of office in 1981. I was giving a speech in Washington, D.C. in 1981, and I was shot by John Hinckley Jr. But I survived. I also called for the Berlin Wall to fall down during my presidency. Iran tourists were holding 52 American hostages, but I released them. I left the office in 1989. What an exciting and busy time to be president. My time as president was rewarding and an adventure. I'm now ready to settle down and spend time with my family. My time as an actor prepared me for the big stage of being the American president. I have accomplished a lot in my lifetime, but I'm most proud of being president of my country, the United States of America. Thank you and good night.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. As a child, my nickname was Half because I always shared my snacks. My name is George Herbert Walker Bush, and I was the 41st President of the United States of America. Not only was I President, but I was also Chairman of the Republican National Committee. I want to tell you about how in my presidency, I helped our country by sending our troops to protect and observe in Saudi Arabia. Way back in the year of 1924, on the 12th of June, a crying baby was born. That's me! I had no idea what I would achieve in my life when I was an adult. I had 4 siblings, Jonathan, Nancy, William, and Prescott. When I was young, my family moved to Connecticut. However, I was born in Milton, Massachusetts. But my family never had financial issues, but they taught me to give to others. I give a lot of credit for where I've gone in life to that. I spent my childhood playing and frolicking in Greenwich, Connecticut. Later, I attended Phillips Academy. After graduating Phillips Academy, I joined the U.S. Navy. I was a pilot, and my plane got shot. Can you guess what war I served in? You got it, World War II. When I returned from war, I attended Yale University for college. I was the captain of the baseball team and a member of the Skull and Bones Society. Next, I was elected chairman of the Republican National Committee. And on January 6, 1945, I married Barbara Pierce. After that, I was elected vice president under Ronald Reagan, and I served 2 terms. Then I knew it. I was determined to be president. I started campaigning immediately. My presidency was something that I took very seriously, but also tried to have fun. One of the hardest things about being president was campaigning. Read my lips, no new taxes. Yep, you heard it, none, not a single penny. One thing that I realized is that I was vice president, now I could pick one, Dan Quayle. In my presidency, I worked on not letting the Persian Gulf War get out of hand. That's when I sent soldiers to Saudi Arabia. My next focus was on affairs in the Soviet Union. In the year of 1991, I signed a contract with Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. This reduced the number of nuclear weapons in both countries. Toward the end of my presidency, I signed the Clean Air Act. This lowered the amount of air pollution. Helping my community was something that was always very important to me. I love my presidency. If I could go back and redo it, I wouldn't change a thing. Several months had passed and I was enjoying some quality time with my family. So far, I had had a very successful life. I was chairman of the Republican National Committee, vice president, and you can't forget that I was president of the United States of America. Don't forget one of my favorite quotes, "No generation can escape history." I would like to be remembered for my hard work, passion, and love. Have a cheerful night.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know when I was 17 years old, I shook hands with President John F. Kennedy in the White House Rose Garden? That inquiry led me to enter a life of public service. My name is William Jefferson Clinton, and I was the 42nd President of the United States of America. Even though I wanted to be the president, I did not have an easy childhood. I was born in Hope, Arkansas on August 19, 1946. I have one half-brother. My father died in a car accident before I was born. I was adopted by my stepfather and changed my name to Clinton when I was 15. I was a good student and played the saxophone in the school band. And I also love gospel music. All of these things would help me get ready to be the president. I had a passion for presidency and knew I wanted to be in public service. I attended Georgetown University, Oxford, and Yale Law School. I was elected Arkansas Attorney General in 1976 and became the governor in 1978. When I lost the re-election, I worked as a lawyer, but soon I ran for governor again and I won. I worked hard and my hard work paid off. Therefore, I decided to run for president. In my presidency, I made some good decisions. One important thing I did was to help families by giving them 3 months off when they have a baby. Then I successfully spread out peacekeeping forces from war-torn Bosnia. Afterwards, I bombed Iran to stop the United Nations inspection for nuclear weapons. These are some of the good decisions I made for the people of the United States. In closing, I have lived a wonderful life with my wife Hillary and daughter Chelsea. Throughout my childhood, I loved playing the saxophone and I was an exceptional student in school. In 1978, I was elected governor of Arkansas, the youngest governor. One highlight about my presidency was I became a world leader who drew large crowds during my travels. The United States history will never be the same without my presidency.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know that I wrote my own book called Discussion Points in 2010? I am George W. Bush and I was the 43rd President of the United States. Many people call me Bushy. I want to tell you about my childhood and career in Texas and how I made hard decisions during my presidency. When I was a child, I wanted to be president, so I tried really hard and I achieved this goal. I was born on July 6, 1946 in New Haven, Connecticut. I was the oldest of 6 siblings. My sister died in 1953. This was a very difficult time for me. Growing up, I enjoyed riding bikes and taking part in Cub Scouts. These are some of my best memories from my childhood. When I was in school, I struggled with my lessons, but I decided to try my best. In 1961, I attended Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. I graduated from Phillips Academy in 1964, and then I entered Yale University. Before I was president, I worked in the Air National Guard and bought a part of the Texas Rangers baseball team. In 1978, I campaigned for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, but lost. But in 1994, won the election for governor of Texas and after 4 years was reelected. As president, I am known for the No Child Left Behind Act. That means all school students should have the same opportunity to learn. One of my favorite famous quotes is, "We seek peace, we strive for peace, and sometimes peace must be defended." When I was in a kindergarten class, my security told me that America is under attack. The terrorist attack on 9/11 made me send out troops to find the terrorists and create a war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I helped the city and people to rebuild from the damage of Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans. Thank you for listening to my speech.
Good evening, fellow Americans. Each of us is free to seek our own dreams, but we must also serve a common purpose. My name is Barack Obama. I was the 44th President of the United States of America. I had a good presidency and a great life. My nickname is Barry, and the Secret Service calls me Renegade. The name Barack means one who is blessed, and I've had a very blessed life. I had a very interesting childhood. I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. My dad moved away when I was 2 years old to Kenya. My mom and I went to live with my grandparents, Toot and Gramps. Gramps and I like to go spearfishing. My mom got married again and we moved to Indonesia. My dad died in a car accident in 1982. I had a lot of adventures growing up and learned a lot about different people and places. Education was very important to me. And I wanted to learn as much as I could. When I was 10, I got a scholarship to a school in Hawaii. Then in high school I joined the basketball team. I liked working with my teammates. I went to Occidental College, then Columbia University, where I earned a degree in political science. I then studied law at Harvard. I married my wife Michelle in 1992. My education prepared me for being president. I became president January 20th, 2009, and I was reelected in 2012. I was the first African American president, and I won the Nobel Peace Prize. I ran for president in 2008, and I got 67 million votes, more than any president has ever gotten. I wanted all Americans to have health care and be treated equally. I have also written several books, and I have 2 daughters, Malaya and Sasha. I worked hard to make America a better place for everyone. Wow, I've had a lot of adventures. I can see how I was voted the most admired man for 11 years. Because I have a mixed background and I lived in different places. I learned about different cultures and people. Not only did I receive more votes than any other president, but I was the first president to have a smartphone. I served 2 terms as president, but I am now looking forward to spending more time with my family. I will leave you with some advice. We are the change that we seek. God bless America. Thank you.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Did you know I did a board game called Trump the Game? I'm Donald J. Trump. I'm the 45th President of the United States. I want to tell you about my career in presidency. I was raised in New York in a wealthy area. I am bright and energetic, but because of my bad behavior in school, I went to the New York Military School. After graduating from New York Military School, I attended the University of Pennsylvania Sports and School of Finance. I chose to major in finance. My dad also gifted me multiple real estate properties. In addition, I renamed the organization Trump Organization. After thinking about running for president, I ran and won the election. However, I was almost impeached twice. On a higher note, I appointed 3 Supreme Court judges, 44 circuit court judges, and 112 district court judges. One of my most memorable quotes is, "Make America Great Again." I began building a border wall between the United States and Mexico. I signed a $738 billion defense bill to give the U.S. military pay raise, and a $2 trillion coronavirus care package separated between Americans and American companies. Surprisingly, I lost the election and left the White House on January 20th, 2021, but I look forward to seeing you around. Have a wonderful evening.
Every 4 years, the third grade President's Night presentation has the unique challenge of delivering a profile of the winner in the most recent election. The United States is remarkable in its historical, tried and true rhythm of listening to the people each year, with staggered elections for representation with our congressmen, our senators, and our commander-in-chief, the President of the United States. Since the installment of the office of the President of the United States in 1789, there have been 46 presidents, 19 of whom have served more than one term. This year we have a new president, Joe Biden. Mr. Biden was vice president under Barack Obama from 2008 to 2016. And this election was his third attempt at the presidency. President Biden epitomizes the quote, "If at first you don't succeed, try again." Joe Biden was born in 1942 in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He is of Irish descent with one sister and 2 brothers. His family moved to Delaware when he was young. He played football and baseball in high school and eventually went to the University of Delaware in Newark and graduated with a double major in history and political science with a minor in English. He later earned a law degree from Syracuse University College of Law. Mr. Biden speaks with a stutter, which has improved since his early 20s by reciting poetry in front of a mirror. Mr. Biden has been focused on helping people from the time he began his public service as a career as a public defender. Mr. Biden married Nyla Hunter in 1966, and together they had 3 children, Bo, Hunter, and Naomi. Nyla and Naomi were tragically killed in a car accident many years ago. Bo and Hunter were injured, but went on to grow up to help people through military and political service. 5 years after the death of his first wife, Mr. Biden married his current wife, Jill, in 1977. She earned a Doctor of Education degree and has worked at various colleges and universities. Together they have a daughter named Ashley. Mr. Biden is the second president of the United States who worships the Lord in affiliation with the Catholic tradition. The first was President John F. Kennedy. Mr. Biden has the distinction of being the youngest person elected to serve in the Senate and the oldest elected to serve as president. President Biden will be represented in our program by a third grade student next year. God bless the United States of America.